guys, and welcome to my book nook. Today's vlog is going to be a fun one as I am doing an And Then There Were None retellings vlog, which is all based around the book And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie is known as the locked room mystery thriller, and we are going to talk about exactly what a locked room mystery thriller entails, the different qualifications that it has to have, and then read a bunch of books that either have straight out claimed to be Agatha Christie retellings, or books that I researched and found lots of people saying on Goodreads and other websites that they were Agatha Christie retellings. And then we're going to see if I agree with it or not and rank them not only in order of my favorite, but in order of what I think stays the most true to And Then There Were None. Which means I'm also going to be reading And Then There Were None in this vlog because I haven't actually read that yet and I kind of can't compare them to anything until I read the Queen's work herself. So the reason that And Then There Were None is so popular is because before Agatha Christie wrote that, though this wasn't a normal, now it's a trope, this wasn't a normal thing. She kind of started the whole isolated setting, everybody's in the same room with each other, they're all here for some reason that they don't know of, and they start dying off one by one, and you have to figure out who the killer is before more and more people die. That wasn't really a popular trope or plot that had happened before she wrote it, and now it's all the time isolated setting murder type books, which I actually really love that. That's one of my favorite tropes, is an isolated setting with murders ensuing. But that doesn't always mean that they're always good. In order for these books to actually get onto this list, and I had a lot of books to choose from and I eliminated it and narrowed it down to the ones that I felt would be best for this video, they have to fit the actual locked room mystery, which according to Google, apparently a book where a crime, typically a murder, takes place under a set of seemingly impossible circumstances in a location that has been locked or sealed off from the outside world. So it has to have an isolated setting. It has to have people dying off one by one, and it can't be by coincidence. There's a killer at large. And so, like I said, I looked off books on Goodreads. I actually found lists that actually said, these are locked room mystery thrillers, And Then There Were None retellings. I looked at books that claimed to be it themselves, and I just kind of narrowed it down. And so in this vlog, you will hear me talk about 9 books. However, I'm only actually reading 5 for this vlog. I had already read 4 prior to this vlog. And so I will be talking about those 4 books and just give you my basic rundown, review of what I thought about it. And then the other ones, I will actually be vlogging the process. And I'll be ranking them in 2 different ways at the end, in my order of favorites, and then in the order that I think is best acquainted to Agatha Christie's original work. So the 4 books that you are going to see me discuss that I'm not actually reading in this vlog are The Guest List by Lucy Foley, 9 Lives by Peter Swanson, Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins, and then Shiver by Allie Reynolds. And the 2 that are on that list that actually claimed to be Agatha Christie retellings themselves were 9 Lives and Reckless Girls. And so those are the ones that I especially had to have on this list because I had to see if what they say actually matched up. And then the 5 books that I am going to actually be reading for this vlog is And Then There Were None, obviously. Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney, which I'm pretty sure that one is said to be an Agatha Christie retelling as well. One by One by Ruth Ware. The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. I've heard this is an Agatha Christie-esque one. And An Unwanted Guest by Shari Lapena. So, I'm actually really excited to read all of those. I have read from all of those authors except for Agatha Christie at least once. So, I'm hoping that I will enjoy these, but you never know. So, with that, I'm going to get into the vlog, and obviously I'm going to start with And Then There Were None. There are going to be spoiler sections for most of these books, so that if you have read And Then There Were None, and you've read some of these books, and you want to see what I compare about them specifically, then you can, but I will mark everything so that I'm not giving anything away, I'm not spoiling anything, because I don't want to spoil these books for you if you do want to read them, but there will be spoiler sections, so just keep that in mind as you're watching this video. Okay, friends, update on And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. Finally reading this, and I am about 25% in. It's not a very long book. It's about 250 pages. And it took a little while to adjust to the writing because, like I said, she wrote this when? In the 30s, I think? Something like that. Let me see. Yeah, 1939. So it's pretty old. And this book would not fly in the present day. She calls people hussies in this, and she says racist stuff about Jewish people and black people. And I mean, this book used to be called 10 Little Beep Beep, a bad word. So yeah, this book would not fly nowadays. So it's taken a bit of an adjustment to read it in that sense. but I'm starting to like it a little bit more. We had our first death. So if you don't know what this book is about, it is the OG, like 10 strangers are lured to an isolated island mansion by this mysterious UNON. And then at dinner, there's a recorded message that plays that accuses each of them of having murdered someone. And by the end of the night, one of those guests is dead. And so then they start dying one by one. And it's like, okay, well, who is the killer? And are any of them going to survive? And so like, this is the OG for that type of book. Hence why we're reading Daisy Darker, Reckless Girls, You're Invited, and whatever other book I'm reading in this vlog that I'm currently forgetting at the moment. But that's why I'm reading all of the retellings, because I wanted to see if these books actually match up to this. And what I really love about this book is what she wrote, I think at the beginning. She wrote, I had written this book because it was so difficult to do that the idea had fascinated me. 10 people had to die without it becoming ridiculous or the murderer being obvious. I wrote the book after a tremendous amount of planning, and I was pleased with what I had made of it. It was clear, straightforward, baffling, and yet had a perfectly reasonable explanation. In fact, it had to have an epilogue in order to explain it. It was well received and reviewed, but the person who was really pleased with it was myself, for I knew better than any critic how difficult it had been. And I just love that, because I'm sure once I get to the end, I'm going to be like, oh wow, that was fabulous. Because you read some, and then there were none retellings, and it's like, this was beyond above and crazy, and we're going to talk about that, because obviously we're going to talk about that. And maybe I'll even talk about some of the retellings that I've read at the end that before I read this, and see how they match up to it, because I am, like I said, grading all of these books on a scale based off that I decide once I finish this book. But anyway, I'm 25% in. I'm liking it. The writing's a little funky, but I'm getting through it. We had our first step, like I said, and yeah. So I'm gonna go to sleep because it's a little late, and I plan on reading more tomorrow. I'll check back in with an update tomorrow. You're getting an update from my kid's bedroom because we're playing and cleaning, and he's making a mess with Play-Doh. I finished And Then There Were None last night on my sprints with Neva. So we did a couple sprints and I finished. It's not very long. It's like 250-ish pages. And I know this is the whole like reason I'm doing this vlog, but this was just a 3-star for me. I don't know if Agatha Christie is the girly for me. It wasn't bad. It just, I feel like it's extremely overhyped for like the story that it was. Like I thought it was a good story, but it was just kind of eh. So, And Then There Were None. The whole premise is that there are 10 people that they are not related necessarily, anything at all, and they are all invited somehow by someone like that's close to them, apparently, invited and get this note to go to this island, which is called, I think it's Station Island in here, and they're all invited by this man named UNON, which is like unknown, if you get it. Anyway, they're all invited to this island. They all appear there on the same exact day. They're all at dinner, and then all of a sudden this record starts playing with all of the people that they've each murdered. They've each been responsible for murdering one person. And of course they're all like, I didn't murder a person. What are you talking about? Why is that happening? And then lo and behold, one of them ends up dead a couple of hours later. And the whole book keeps going like that. Now, why it was only a 3-star for me is, one, it's very old in its language. This book would not fly in the light of day, but I can't hold that against Miss Christie. She wrote this in the 30s. Why I more didn't like it is just because I didn't really feel attached to any of the characters, and every time another person died, I'm like, okay, sure, I don't really care. I will say, I also am a little unsure if my rating would have been higher had I not already known the ending because of stupid Peter Swanson. And I also wonder if I would have guessed that, because I have a feeling I would have guessed it, but I feel like I'm biased because I went into this murder knowing who it was. I honestly think this book kind of went into well of a perfect bow, and I think the ending, which was explained in the epilogue, like the very last bit when you find out who it is, I'm like, I don't think that was going to work the way that you planned it, but it is what it is. And then normally, and then I guess that's it. And then There Were None. If to make it an And Then There Were None retelling, you have to have your elaborate ending at the end where you explain it all, because you end this book not knowing who the killer is, and then the killer's like, okay, I'm gonna explain myself and this is what happened, and so you find out what happened. So this is a 3-star. That does not mean that I'm not going to enjoy the other books in this series, in this retelling, because I typically do enjoy retellings better, so I have a feeling I'm going to like them more. But yeah, overall, she might not be the girly for me. I'm willing to give her another chance, but this one was just middle of the road for me. Okay, while I'm here, let's talk about the spoilers for And Then There Were None. Okay, so they're all invited on this island, and you know, like I said, by UNON, they're on Station Island, and people start getting murdered, and then all of this crazy stuff happens. Well, the thing that makes And Then There Were None and then there were none, and an actual murder, is because one of the dead people was actually the killer. He was not dead. So the whole book revolves around this, like, 10 little soldiers. One hanged himself, and then there were 9. Like, there's a whole, like, it used to be 10 little Indians, I think. It's 10 little soldiers now. It's a nursery rhyme, and the killer basically kills them all in the same fashion as this. Like, it says one hanged themselves, one choked themselves, one was red herring. So the character that ended up doing this, remember this is spoilers, was Justice Wargraves, the judge. And he tells his maniacal plot at the end about how he got away with basically murdering someone that I don't think was actually guilty, and he ended up making them guilty because he didn't like them and they had to go to prison for their whole life or get killed or something. And after that, he was like, I wonder how many other people have gotten away with a murder that was just kind of like pushed to the side, like, and wasn't recognized as a murder, and those people should pay. And so he just picks 10 people at random, like randomly researching and all this stuff, and picks these 10 people that he thinks deserve to die for their crimes and invites them to this island. And he starts killing them in different ways, like poison, shooting one, hitting one with a boulder, and all this stuff. And then one of them, he like tricks with him to pretend to kill him so that he can sneak around and catch the murderer in the live. And of course, that doesn't help. And he ends up, like, while the guy's not looking, pushing him off of the cliff, and he ends up dying and drowning, and he like tricked him. And so then there's 3 people left, not including Justice Wargraves, because he's dead. And there's 3 people left, and one of them ends up getting crushed in the head with a boulder. And so there's only 2 of them left, and they stare at each other and go, oh, well, it's either you or it's me. And so the girl ends up killing the other guy because she's like, well, I'm not going to let you kill me. And then the last line of the book is, one hung herself and then there were none. And so she goes into her bedroom, and there's a noose and a chair and all this stuff ready. And I guess Justice Wargraves thought that psychologically, since she actually did murder someone, and it was her fault, that she would, like, think she needed to pay for her crimes and hang herself. And then it worked, which I'm like, okay. So then after that, when everyone's dead, the police end up finding out that it has to have been somebody that had already died, because the chair that she used to kick herself to hang herself was not underneath her anymore. It was put back nicely by the table. And so they're like, well, it's somebody that was there. Who was it? And it's him, and he explains this whole thing. And then what he does is he ends up killing himself too. He like sets this like trap so that he pulls the string and the revolver shoots him in the forehead where he had supposedly died already, and he falls back into his bed where he died, and that they're all dead. And he wrote this note in a bottle, and it washes away at sea, so that maybe someone finds out who killed them, but maybe someone never does. And I just think that wrapped up in too nice a little bow to actually work. So I don't know about this. I don't know. But basically, to make this work, you have to have someone that comes back from the dead that is part of, like, in on the knowing. And I don't know if all these other books are going to do that or not, but I guess we're going to see. All right, moving on. Hello, friends. I feel like every time I'm going to update this vlog now, I'm going to end up being in my Undead Readers shirt because I just love it so much. It's a vibe. Anyway, update on Daisy Darker, as this is the first book that, you know, I'm reading for this And Then There Were None retelling vlog. Aside from And Then There Were None. So, this one, I don't think I've come on yet to talk about it. This one is about Daisy Darker. Her entire family is assembling for her Nana's 80th birthday party, and she lives in this crumbling gothic house on this tiny, like, coastal island. They're back together one last time, and then when the tide comes in, they're going to be cut off from the rest of the world for 8 hours. Of course, each of them has a secret. At the stroke of midnight, Nana ends up dead. An hour later, another family member ends up dead, and, like, they're starting to get killed off one by one, just like And Then There Were None. And so they're trapped on an island with the murderer, and they have to find out, like, who it was before all their secrets are revealed, and they're also killed as well. And so I am really loving this. Alice Feeney writes really lyrically, like very beautiful writing, and so I'm very much enjoying this book. I found the audiobook on Scribd, and it is a British narrator, which makes me love it even more, although there are things that are different between like what the book says and what the audiobook is saying. Not anything like super crazy, but like a couple words and a couple like phrases and sentences, but I will give her a beautiful A+ for the writing. I loved her last book too, Rock, Paper, Scissors. That's the only book I've read by her. I loved it. Like, ate it up. My mom read it and didn't care for it. I'm hoping that this is also going to be another 5 stars. I know my queen, Haley Hughes, just read it, and she gave it a 3.5 stars. She said the ending just didn't go where she wanted it to go, and the twist kind of fell flat, and so I'm kind of hesitant on that. But we will see. But I will say, like, this, my favorite thing about this is that the Nana is an author, and she wrote a book called Daisy Darker about her favorite grandkid. And I love that as they're getting killed, like, obviously this is not like a giveaway because Nana is the first one to die, and we all know that Nana was gonna die. Like, that's the whole point this book was written. Is they have these creepy poems that are like written in like this format, and it's about the whole family. So it'll say things like, Daisy Darker's Nana was the oldest but least wise. The women's will made them all feel ill, which is why she had to die. Nana said she loved her family, but it wasn't always true. The old bat was more bitter and angry with them than any of them knew. She wished her son had been born a girl, or not been born at all. The granddaughters were a blessing at first, but her hopes soon hit a wall. And it keeps saying stuff like that. And they have a poem for like each family member as like they're starting to get knocked off. So anyway, I'm very excited to see where this continues. I'm at the 44% mark right now. We've had a couple of killings from different people, different family members. And so I have like my speculations on who I think the killer is. However, I'm probably not right because I'm never right about these things. But I might have a spoiler section at the end depending on what the twist is, and then I'll let you know like what my thoughts were in case you have read this and you want to hear thriller spoilers. But yeah, I'm seriously enjoying this, and I'm just gonna keep listening to it while I lesson plan for the rest of the night. I'm also confused because, which I'm fine knowing now, like you're all like Trixie, and then I'm like, I thought she died.
Oh yeah, you're at the point where she hasn't woken up.
Wake up.
That's so funny because yeah, I was like, oh shoot, my prediction was wrong. She's done. And then when she came back, I was like, boom, I knew it. I said she was dead. And the ghost.
What?
I hated it. I hated that. I was like, why? Why?
Wait, was she the whole time?
The entire she's been dead.
What?
Yeah. So now I want to go back through it. I'm like, no one talked to her? How did I not notice? Yeah, and that's what a lot of people who gave it 5 stars were saying is like, this was the type of book that made them want to go back and read it all over again.
All right, I'm in my bed chilling, and I'm going to talk about Daisy Darker super quick. And I have to make this quick because this vlog is already becoming hella long as I'm editing it. So you saw in those clips, Daisy was a ghost. The entire time she's a ghost, and there were a lot of clues, and I didn't catch on any of them, like the fact that nobody was talking to her and stuff. She's a ghost the whole time. What happened to her is she had a heart condition from when she was little. People said she was only going to ever live to be 15 or so. She's 13. They're all at this abandoned place for their Nana's birthday. The Nana ends up dead. A bunch of people end up dead. Everyone ends up dead except for Trixie, which is her cousin, and that's it. And Nana. Apparently Trixie and Nana were the murderers. You find out that when Daisy was 13, the reason she died is that her brother and his girlfriend and a bunch of other people like accidentally hit her with their car. They couldn't find a pulse. They thought she was dead, so they said she's going to die soon anyway. Might as well throw her over the cliff. And they throw her over the cliff by the Nana's house, and her eyes open as she's getting tossed over the cliff. She's not actually dead, so they actually killed her. And so because of that, Trixie is the only one that can see Daisy as a ghost. And Daisy confides in her and tells her what happened, and she tells Nana, and they decide to get revenge on the entire family. So Nana helps Trixie murder all of them. And then right after that, the Nana's like, I can finally see Daisy. I'm at peace again. I loved her. And she kills herself so she can be with Daisy. And then Trixie decides she's going to grow up and have a normal life compared to all of this comparatively. So that is the story. I would say this is very much, I was not expecting that, and honestly, I really loved it. I know a lot of people didn't like the whole ghosty thing. It worked for me, and I really actually appreciated it a lot more knowing that was what was coming after I had Haley and Kayla ruin it for me. As far as the ranking goes for And Then There Were None, I would say that this is the closest one because it has the same premise. Someone brought them all there for a reason to celebrate the Nana's 80th birthday and got them all together, and then someone ends up killing them off one by one until there is literally only one person left standing. And so honestly, I think that is the closest retelling, and it was done in a very unique way. And I absolutely loved it. Like, this was my favorite of the retellings that I've read so far. I absolutely loved this book. I really do like Alice Feeney. I know she's not for everyone, but this one was fabulous. I highly recommend this one. But this one's at the top right now, pretty much, as far as rankings go. So now, let's see what other books are on the docket. Guest list is getting the shortest premise and spoilers because I have no more time for this vlog. And it was my favorite, just so you know. This one is about a bride and groom who are having their wedding on the Foley on Cormorant Island off the coast of Ireland. It was the site of a massacre of a religious sect. It's creepy, haunted, cursed, the whole deal. You have the whole the bride's friends, the groom's friends, and then the main person, Aoife, and this other person that like work at the establishment. Find a dead body. You find out that Will is the one that is dead. Will is the groom, and you have to find out what happened over time. And that is the premise of this book. Now let's pop into spoilers super quick. Basically, you find out that Aoife, one of the head capers, is the one that killed Will because a long time ago, him and his best man, Jono, accidentally pranked this little girl and made her go into like this tidal pool, and she ended up drowning, and that was her daughter. And so as soon as she found out that it was him, she decided he had to die. But he had done a lot of other crap as well. One of his bride's best friends, he had caused her sister to commit suicide because he had put a revenge porn video of her out onto the internet, and she killed herself because of that. He had also gotten one of the other people pregnant and like refused to help them with the baby. He had done a lot of like really shitty things basically to each person. And the reason that I loved this book way more than the others is that I just didn't see any of it coming. And when you find out and you put all the pieces together that he did this and he did this and he did this and he was responsible for all the things, I thought it was very well done, very well crafted. I was very impressed by it. I loved this book. I had so much fun with it. It's one of my favorite thrillers of all time. It is a great one. As far as the And Then There Were None retellings go, I put this kind of low because it was just by chance that the wedding happened to be where it was, that Will had done something to someone that was in the wedding party or involved, and if they hadn't have been there, it might not have happened that way. Maybe it would have still, maybe the secrets would have still gotten out about Will, but I'm not entirely sure that they would have. So that is where it ranks. We're moving on. Okay, I've started One by One. One by One is by Ruth Ware. It's the first Ruth Ware I've ever read, and it's basically about, it follows two different perspectives of one girl named Liz and one named Erin. And Liz used to work for this company called Snoop, and basically it's kind of like Spotify in the sense that you can snoop on anybody in the world, famous people, non-famous people, and see what they're listening to at any given moment and be listening to it at the same time as them. And if they pause it, then it stops on your end as well, which is like interesting, but like I don't know why that would exist. And of course, so it takes place on a ski resort. I'm not sure exactly where, but basically the main heads of the company and a couple other staff are deciding to go on this trip. I can't remember why they're going, but basically the whole argument is that some of the head investors, one of them wants to resell the company and the other one does not, because then they're going to lose all of their shares. And Liz doesn't work for the company anymore, but she has shares in the company, so that's why she's there. And then Erin, the other perspective, is just one of the valet / like all around server workers at the hotel who has to like make sure that they're well accommodated and whatnot, because they're a really expensive group that like they're providing services for. And so the perspective is between the two of them. However, Erin has some association with one of them, and it has yet to be determined as to what. And so I'm 50% in, and the first 30% I kind of thought was boring, and I didn't care for, and I wasn't sure if I was going to like this book or not. And then I'm at 50% now, and 2 characters have died. And so it's starting to get that And Then There Were None-ish thing. However, my main tiff with this is that it talks about Snoop all the time. They are always arguing about like profit shares and all this other stuff. And I'm like, I don't really care about that company aspect, so that's kind of boring for me. But I guess that is what it is. But other than that, like, it's starting to pick up. I'm kind of intrigued. I have my thoughts on who the killer is, but we will see. I want to finish this book tonight. I started it today. I want to finish it all in a day and just be done with it. So that's where I'm at. I'll update you again when I read a lot further. Hello, update on One by One. I am now about 68% in. I'm hoping to finish this today or tomorrow. I think 3 or 4 characters have died now so far, and so it's starting to get more like that And Then There Were None effect. However, there's 6 people left, and I don't know if they're all going to die yet. But we found out some really interesting information finally about Erin, one of the main characters in the story, how she ties in and actually knows one of the people from the group, and I was not expecting that. And I'm not going to say what it is because that would totally be a spoiler. But I was not expecting that. Let's just say that. So I'm intrigued to see what continues to happen with this story. This is just kind of meh for me right now. I feel like, honestly, It's probably going to be a 3-star. Like, it's not my favorite thing in the world, but like, I'm not completely bored while I'm reading it. But, my son's in here, sorry. I'm just not very invested in any of the characters. It's kind of boring. They still talk about their company way too much. I don't see this getting more than a 3-star, but I'm going to finish the rest and I'll update you when I'm finished. I got to 80% of this, so I'm almost there. I knew who the killer was on page 1, so I'm just like, okay, well.
Well, she tells you.
Not on page 1.
Well, not on page 1, but she tells you pretty early in the book.
I feel like...
No, she doesn't. She doesn't tell you till page
No. She does early.
You missed it.
What?
Yeah.
So you read
I
this?
feel like I remember knowing, yeah.
Yeah.
What?
But
No,
not 100% because I thought something would...
No. She definitely, like, she tells really early. A lot of times she tells you what's happening and, like, it's the characters finding out.
I must have really been bored by this book if I missed that. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's really early too.
Are you doing the audio?
Yes.
Oh. She's falling asleep listening to audio, that's why.
Yes, now I remember that.
I'm not really using Hoopla that much.
I'm mad now.
So I think
When you think about it, I missed that.
I literally don't like this book. And honestly, it's gonna be a 2.5-star now that I know that happened. Okay, so you just saw the sprint of me finding out that the killer was revealed on page 35, and I was so bored with this book that I missed it. I don't like books that do that. I don't care for it. So anyway, this is a 2.5-star read, and I finished, and it was just I didn't care for it. Didn't care for it at all. So let's get into the spoilery section of why I didn't care for this book. So this entire book, is about like I've already talked about, we've talked about the whole like company, like them doing a retreat, and like one of the profit owners wants to sell their shares, the other person doesn't, and like all of the stuff. And the two perspectives are from Liz and Aaron. Well, Liz is the killer, no surprise there. She did the killing because the girl that wants to sell the shares, Ava, basically has blackmailed her because a while back at like a party, a Snoop party, this is why she quit, this guy was coming on to her and like being really, really inappropriate with her and touching her poorly. And so she ended up pushing him off the balcony and he died. And Ava saw that and said she would take her secret to the grave, but has been blackmailing her since, basically being like, you have to side with me on everything, including the sale. But Liz didn't want to side with her on the sale because then she would lose all of her shares, her 2% in the shares. And so she basically decided that she had to kill Ava or this would continue forever. And so she murders Ava. And then she kills Elliot because he either found out or he was inventing software for Snoop. Oh yeah, he was inventing software for Snoop that would let you know where people were at certain times, and it would have put her together with like where she was at the time of the murder. So she kills Elliot, and then she kills Annie simply because Annie says, I didn't see her, and she's talking about, I didn't see Liz come back down the slope. And so she's basically saying, I didn't see her, meaning she was the one that killed her. And so she kills Amy because of an unfortunate sighting or lack of seeing. And so then finally what happens is a couple of them have decided to go try and find help. And so they leave Erin, the one girl who has hurt her ankle by falling down the stairs already. They leave her alone with Liz. And then Erin slowly realizes that Liz is the killer. And I can't remember how she ends up putting 2 and 2 together, but she realizes it. And Liz realizes that she knows, and she doesn't want to kill her, but she's going to have to. And then she spills her whole story, why she had to do this. And then basically Erin decides, well, I have to get out of here. And Liz is like, well, I can't let her tell on me. And so Erin, it always comes back to like a crazy ski like scene where they're fleeing for their lives on a treacherous slope in the middle of an avalanche blizzard. And so, of course, Erin has a broken ankle and she's trying to get away from Liz. And Liz is chasing after her and she has her own injuries as well. And then it looks like she's about to get Erin. And then because Liz doesn't know the terrain as well as Erin, runs into this giant rock and like gets severely killed. Like even her brain matter comes out on the floor. It was pretty graphic in that regard. And she dies. And then Erin, gets found because Liz had stolen Elliot's phone that had like information on it, and they find Erin, and basically at the end, like Snoop ends up going bankrupt, and it's just a whole thing. And Erin just ends up, I can't remember what she's doing, but you also find out that Erin was the one that knew them all because she apparently was part of a very rich family, and she was engaged to this really like popular rich man, and then an avalanche happened at that same location, and she couldn't save him, and he got buried in the snow. And so that was a very traumatic thing for her. And so that's like how she knew them. And so it was trying to throw you off that Aaron was the killer, but she wasn't. It was Liz. Anyway, it was just whatever. But the thing that bothered me is that after you find out who the killer is, and after the killer dies, and you find out about Ava, there's like 50 more pages where they're trying to bring in other crap, and I just was not there for it. So I did not enjoy this book, and it really bothered me that on page 35 they tell you who the killer is, because I don't like that sort of crap. Anyway, as far as it goes to And Then There Were None, I would put it in the middle, because yes, she's killing people off one by one, but she's killing people not all because they deserve to die, because not every person that was invited on this retreat deserves to die. She's just killing off the people that she knows for sure needed to die in order for her to get away with what she needed to get away with. So I feel like it's And Then There Were None in that regard. And of course, they're all brought there. Like, she didn't invite them. She got invited. So it's not And Then There Were None in that regard, because she would have had to be the one to invite them all to have it. So I feel like it's just half and half. It's like probably in the middle as far as the rankings go. But that's how I feel about this one. So on to another book. Okay, hello, coming at you with my Reckless Girls premise, spoilers, and everything all in one sitting, because like I told you, I was going to read this for this vlog, and then I kind of read it and didn't vlog it, so I'm just going to talk about it instead. This one follows our main character, Lux, which I really like that name, and her boyfriend, Nico, and they're living in Hawaii trying to save enough money to fix his boat up. One day she gets fired, and he tells her that he's just been hired by 2 American girls, Brittany and Emma, to sail them to Moreau Island, which is this island in the South Pacific. He convinces Lux to come with him. And that's the present day. And in the past, Brittany and Emma are traveling in Europe. They were brought together by a shared tragedy, but agree to tell people that they met in college, and you don't know what the shared tragedy is. And so they're all sailing together to this endangered island. And they meet Jake and Eliza there, which is a couple that was already there. And so Emma's seeming a little weird around Jake and Eliza. You're not really understanding why. And so the whole story is that one of them, or that someone goes missing and another person ends up dead. And so they're wondering, like, what's actually going on? Like, how do they all know each other? Like, what hidden mysteries are in there? And so now I'm just going to dive to the spoiler part of this book. Before I do, I gave this book a 3.5 stars, and not because it is actually good quality, because it's a pretty bad book, and it's pretty outlandish and pretty ridiculous, but because the vibes were there. This book was a very fun, easy read. I read it in like a day or two. My friend Neva, I'm sorry if you're watching this, I know she loves this book and gave it like 5 stars. I cannot give it the same rating. But I still really enjoyed it. But it was just absolutely ridiculous. So now we're going to get to the spoiler section. Get to the goods, you know? So a lot of wild stuff goes down, but basically Lux is looking for Nico. Nico is the one that's missing. She finds his body, and she finds Jake's machete nearby, and so she takes the machete and she finds Nico's bow. And then Eliza and Brittany, who are friends now, show up and want to explain that Eliza is really Chloe. And Chloe, that's her real name, and that Chloe and Brittany wanted revenge on the men who killed their lives, so they planned to kill Jake and Emma and steal Jake's money and drugs. Emma is the girlfriend of the boy who killed her family, and she did nothing about it. So that's why Brittany and Emma are friends, because Emma felt guilty for Brittany, and she knows that she actually didn't help kill her family, but, you know, anyway, so that's what happened there. And so they both wanted revenge. So then Brittany confesses to having killed Nico, explaining that Lux would never be free until Nico was gone. And then as Jake emerges from the jungle, Eliza accidentally shoots Brittany. Eliza shoots Jake in the leg. Eliza gives Lux the gun and tells her to shoot Jake, and then they'll escape with all the money and the drugs. But instead, Lux shoots Eliza and Jake, and everyone is dead, and she's considered missing, and she ends up meeting a sad American tourist in Thailand and convinces her to rob her boyfriend and come off with Lux and sail away. And so Lux just becomes this crazy murderer, sails away, living her dream life in Thailand. It's crazy. It's crazy. The book, the last like 60 pages, went for a whirlwind of events. As far as And Then There Were None retellings go, this is not And Then There Were None retelling. I mean, it's better than others in the sense that Brittany and Eliza both, like, Eliza was already there, and Brittany knew Eliza but didn't want anybody to know that. It is in the premise that they got the people that they wanted revenge on to come to that place, but they weren't planning on killing everyone, and a lot of other stuff goes wrong. So, like, there's parts about it. I mean, it's an isolated setting because they're on this abandoned island. I don't know. There's parts of it that were in Then There Were None like, but I would not call this an Agatha Christie retelling classic. Not a well done one. This one is honestly in the middle. Higher than others, but it's still in the middle. I honestly have to marinate on where I would put this. Let's get to other books. All right, hello, hunting party update. I started this last night and I was at 7%, so I didn't really feel like updating. And then I was gonna update at the 30% mark and I just kept reading and now I'm at the 50% mark. So we're first update 50%. And so this one is Lucy Foley's first novel. And I've read the guest list, as you've already seen. Well, you've probably already seen content for that in this. I can't remember if it's before or after this, but I loved that one. I didn't so much love the Paris apartment, and the hunting party is reading very, very, very similar to the guest list, but I'm not loving it as much as the guest list. I will say I started listening to this audio only, and that was a bad idea because there's like 6 different characters that you switch between, like for each chapter, and they all sounded very, very alike. And so I was getting really confused at like who was who and who was married to who and who's friends with who, and it was all really confusing. And so at about 25% in, I really couldn't care less. And then I decided to switch it up, and for the next 15%, read it physically and listen to it. And that really helped me further figure out who the characters are for everything. And I feel much better knowing who's who and all that. And so now I'm back to listening to audio and it all makes sense to me and I know like who's who. I just have to actively make sure that when a new chapter starts, I listen to who the chapter is about, or I'm lost until like a little bit later. But basically, this one is about how, I can't remember who set up the reunion, but there's a bunch of them. I think there's 10, or there's 9 of them having a New Year's reunion in the remote Scottish wilderness. And the way that they booked it, but they accidentally, the 2 gatekeepers, ended up accidentally double booking it to like this weird couple from Iceland. So like there's this weird couple from Iceland and the 9 people and the 2 gatekeepers there. And the snow and the wind and the blizzard becomes really, really bad. And they all get stuck there. And so not much has happened yet, except for there is a dead body. It is a girl. And we don't know what has happened. And all we know is that the gatekeepers found the body and they just told the people about it. And that is all where we are at. So I get like the And Then There Were None aspect, but I'm just wondering if like other people are going to die, if it's just going to be this one murder. I don't know. We're going to see. But we're 50% in, and that is where we are at. It takes place over 3 days. The gatekeepers' perspectives are always from the present day, and everybody else's perspective is from 3 days, 2 days, 1 day before. We're at the 2-day mark now. I am liking it. It's not like my favorite book in the world, but it's pretty good. I feel like it'll probably be a 3.5, maybe 4-star. We'll see. Just continue where it goes. But I am really liking it so far. All right, I'm about to go to bed. My hair has seen better days, but I figured I would do the update on this book and I finished it. To let you know my thoughts. It's like midnight right now. Anyway, I finished and this is going to be a 3.5 star for me. It almost bumped its way up to a 4. Honestly, I really, really like Lucy Foley's writing. I do. I like her as an author. I think she writes really well. And I will say the second half of this was a much stronger book than the first half, but I can't ignore the fact that the first half was just kind of so that's where we're landing at a 3.5 stars. But I really enjoyed it, and I really like how you start to put stuff together with her like right before she announces it. So I was not expecting the killer, and I actually kind of enjoyed it, but I just feel like the end kind of wrapped up too quickly, and honestly this is just the lesser version of the guest list. Like I feel like by the time she wrote the guest list she was a much better writer. But that is my non-spoilery thoughts on the hunting party. Overall, I would say it's a 3.5 star. I don't really know if I would call it an And Then There Were None thing because literally only one person gets murdered, but I did really enjoy it. Okay, so for spoilery thoughts, there's like 6 different perspectives throughout this. They're all rich hoity-toity people that met at Oxford at some point. So you have Miranda and Julian. Miranda's like the popular, really, really snobby girl married to Julian, the perfect guy. And then you have Emma and Mark, and Emma's like this little nobody, but like she became friends with Miranda late in college. And you have Katie, who's Miranda's best friend, who she's known her for forever from college. And then you have a couple of like nobody characters like Samira and Giles who have a baby together. They're not really important to the story. And then you have Heather and Doug, the two gatekeepers, and Heather has a perspective and Doug also has a perspective in this story. In fact, the perspectives are from Doug and Heather, the gatekeepers, Katie, the best friend, Miranda, Emma, and I think that's it. Yeah. So anyway, what basically happened is you find out within the first half of the book that somebody is dead, and that is a girl, but you don't know who it is. Then later, you come to find out that it was Miranda, and you find out that she was pushed by a woman, and you find that out because there was another gatekeeper that had left early for New Year's, but he hadn't actually left early. He was involved with like this drug cartel, and they were using the lodge as like the place to store their shit, and he needed to move it because he had found the dead body or had seen it happen and knew that the police were going to come and swamp the place. And so he had to move all the drug stuff. And so while he's doing that, Heather, the gatekeeper, had walked in on him. So he had like tied her up. And while he was tying her up, Doug, the other gatekeeper, comes and saves her by shooting him in the shoulder to get him off of her. And so then, you know, the Ian guy confesses everything that he's been doing. And then they realize, well, crap, that means that we left the rifle in the access of the other woman. But they don't know who the other woman is yet because there's a couple of women. But then they narrow it down because he said blonde hair. So then you find out that Miranda, well, first, before you find that out, Miranda was already upset because you find out that her best friend Katie and Julian have been sleeping with each other way before they got married. Like, way before. And so that was wild. So then she's already upset, and then she goes to complain about Katie to her other friend, Emma, and then she's messing around with Emma's jewelry box, and it breaks, and she finds all of this stuff that she thought she had lost over the years, like an earring, a ring, all this other important stuff, and then she realizes that back in college, when she thought she had a stalker, and she thought it was Mark, who's Emma's man, it was actually Emma, and Emma's been her stalker all these years. And so she like storms out of there, and Emma chases after her saying, I just wanted to be like you. I wanted to be your best friend. And she's like, well, best friends don't do that. You're a psychopath. And the word psychopath sets Emma off. So she strangles her on top of this bridge and pushes her into the snowy rock abyss. And she, you know, hits her head and dies. And then as she is doing that, I think Katie finds Emma. And Emma confronts her and decides that since she killed the person she loves more than anyone in this world, she's going to finish the job and kill Katie and Julian for cheating on Miranda and like screwing her over. So she tries to kill Katie, and apparently Heather sees it and gets in the way of the gunshot and does not end up dying. But Katie doesn't die either, which also she's pregnant with Julian's baby. So there's that. And so the epilogue ends with Heather in the hospital and her and Doug possibly going to start a relationship together because they realize that this whole time they've kind of loved each other. And then it ends with Katie being pregnant, but not with Julian. But none of the friend group is friends anymore. Oh yeah, there was this gay couple too, Nick and Beau, but they weren't important. But none of them are friends anymore. And she is going to have this baby, and she finally starts to become friends with their coworkers. And that's the end of this book. And like I said, the end wrapped up very quickly, so it was just kind of whatever for me. But I did enjoy this book. However, I don't really think it's very and then there were none like, because and then there were none, everybody gonna die. One person dies in this book. One. So like, I know they're all invited there under this pretense, although to be fair, the girl wasn't even gonna kill her. That was never intentional. This death was an accident. So like, I feel like this is probably the least of the and then there were none books. But I don't know. I mean, I still enjoyed it. But it just is what it is. So now we're going to move on to our final book that I need to read, in Unwanted Guests by Shari Lapena, which I've heard is basically like One by One, which I just realized is basically like Shiver by Allie Reynolds. All these isolated snow-setting books are the same. Sigh. This is an And Then There Were None retelling, but really it's just a copy-paste shitty version of And Then There Were None, if we are being realistic. And it's 9 strangers, they receive a list with their names in the mail, they don't know what it means, and then all of a sudden they start getting killed off one by one. And so there is one FBI agent who's on the list who's like, I'm going to solve this entire thing. And it is literally, almost exactly a copy-paste, and it's just not good. And the deaths were whatever. The deaths are whatever, and I just didn't care for any of them. But what got me is that he ruins the whole And Then There Were None. Like I said in my most disappointing books of the year, that is why I did not enjoy And Then There Were None. He literally gives a play-by-play, explains it all, what the title used to be, and uses the N-word in here 2 times. Not necessary at all. Why you gotta do that? I don't know why that had to be part of your content and why your editors thought it was a smart idea to use the N-word. You don't need it in here. It did not elaborate the plot. It didn't help enhance it. And then you have to ruin it and say who the character is and what they did. And like, you're doing that as a setup to like explain the end of this. And like, no. No ruining books, even if they were from the 20s. I'm sorry. I'm not okay with that. That is a classic. It is Miss Christie. That is offensive. And I am mad. I'm also not here for a very long villainous like epilogue or monologue where you explain your whole why of why you did this and how it all came to be. Like this letter that the like killer leaves at the end is like 12 pages long, takes forever and ever to read, and I just don't care about that. I think that it should be revealed slowly throughout the book. I don't care to hear your whole monologue at the end. If you're having to explain the entire thing at the end, then you obviously didn't write this well enough to set it up to where we could figure it out without you having to write a 12-page monologue. Like, I kid you not, this letter is 5 ever long. Like, look, it just goes on. Here it goes. Where does it start? It goes on and on and on and on and on and on. It's forever long. This book is awful. I'm never reading a Peter Swanson again. Okay, sorry if you hear my son's TV show in the background. Hopefully you won't. But now that you saw how much I hated 9 Lives, let's actually spoil it for you. So this is the spoiler section for 9 Lives, and then we will talk about how it adds up or how it ranks according to And Then There Were None. I'm looking at my notes because, yeah, you better believe I don't have that piece of trash book in my house anymore. So it's 9 people who seem to be strangers, and they each receive a letter containing a piece of paper with 9 names on it in alphabetical order. The names are not familiar. The envelope is not, they can't identify the envelope. What is this? Why? And of course they're all like, why is my name on this list? Who are these other people? And so then one of the main characters that was on that list is a female FBI agent named Jess. And so you figure she's going to solve the whole thing. A day or 2 later, when a man whose name on the list is found dead, one of them ends up dead. And so Jessica's like checking it out. And his name was Frank. And basically he drank too much and he got his head pushed into a tidal pool where he drowned. And there was a strange letter crumpled in his hand. Then the second victim is found shot to death. And then she starts tracking out all of the people, trying to identify them and see if she can stop the killings before it happens. The victim dies in his bed with a police officer sitting in his car in the driveway. So then it's just like, these deaths are going to happen no matter what. 2 of the people that end up on the list end up like reaching out to each other, and then they kind of end up together, and then they end up dying together, getting poisoned in bed together at the same time. It's just all like super crazy elaborate deaths. And then Jessica even gets shot, but I don't think she actually dies, but she tried to get killed off like halfway through the whole thing. And then basically you find out that one of the people on the list, named Jack Radabaugh, was actually Jonathan Grant, and that he created this list and included his own name on the list as a form of retribution for the death of his sister over 50 years ago. So apparently his daughter died 50 years ago. A bunch of friends of his, that families all lived on like this island. And all the kids were like part of a pirate society. And basically the pirate society, like in order to get inducted into it, you had to do something crazy. And so the sister wanted to be in it. And so they told her she had to go into like this crevice between these 2 rocks in a tidal pool and stay there during high tide. And so of course she does that, but they tie her. They tie her up while they do it. And of course they do that. And then the tide gets too high and she can't get out and she drowns and she dies, and he feels awful for it. And so he decides that to get back at it, he's not going to kill the people directly involved with it. Instead, he's going to kill their kids. I don't really understand. So all of the people on the list were children of the original Pirate Society members. Maybe because a bunch of the Pirate Society is dead by now because it was 50 years ago. And so he kills himself the same way his sister dies, by being in that same crevice and letting himself die with the tide. And then he has a 12-page monologue that is hidden, I think, in his library. And the way that they find it so easily, I'm just like, yeah, no, that would not happen. And it's just insane. And the letter just explains it all. And I just hated it. And it was literally And Then There Were None. Like, yes, this is the most like And Then There Were None, but it's because he copied it. Like, verbatim. So like, I wouldn't really say that it did a good job at being in And Then There Were None. I would just say it tried to copy it and it failed epically. But those are the spoilers for that. I hate this book, and that's all we're going to spend the time on for this. starting the last book of the reading vlog. Waiting for Daddy and Lincoln to get their, what was it? To get a jacket on. We are going to go out to breakfast, and this is the last book. And it's the shortest book, because apparently it's less than 300 pages, so woohoo! Okay. Unwanted guest update. It is very early the next morning, and I basically read 50% of it this morning in bed because I had the Kindle edition. Thank goodness. Okay. I finished. I basically read it all in like, I don't know, 4 hours, essentially. So this one is about a place called Mitchell Inn, which is in the middle of the Catskills in a snowy cabin, and there's like 9 to 10 guests and 2 people that work there, and they all don't know each other. Like, they came as couples or they came as themselves, and there's like an attorney, there's a writer, there's all these other people. One of them ends up dead, and then over time a couple more end up dead, and so you're just trying to figure out, like, why are they dying? Is it all connected? That sort of thing. I enjoyed this one more than The Hunting Party and One by One, so I'm giving it a 4 stars. I thought it was really well done. I had a good time with it. It was quick, easy to get through. I do like Shari Lapena's writing, so this one got a 4 stars for me. However, I don't think it was very much, and then there were none like, so let's do super quick spoilers, and then we'll get to my ranking for that. As far as spoilers go, it was a girl named Lauren who is dating her boyfriend Ian in this, and basically what happened is she kills the first girl, Dana, because apparently 15 years before, they had both been in the same foster home together, and Dana had a different name. Her name was Danny. She was a bully. She bullied Lauren all the time. They were up on the rooftop with this other kid, and Danny was being mean to the other kid, so Lauren stood up for the other kid, and then the other kid was mean to her, so she pushed him off the roof and killed a kid in cold blood. And the couple weeks later, the Danny girl gets adopted and leaves, and so she's like, was worried that she recognized her finally, was going to tell everyone she was a murderer, so she had to kill Dana. So she kills Dana. She gets a note in her book the next morning saying, I saw you kill Dana, and she thinks that it was this girl Candace, the writer, because the writer had been looking at her book a minute prior. So she goes into her room, strangles her with a scarf. Then realizes later when she's behind the lobby desk looking for something that the piece of paper had actually come from Bradley, who is the guy that works there, the son of the owner, and she kills him when they're all looking out in the snow for Riley, who is also dead from PTSD. She heard a gunshot. She used to work in Afghanistan. Goes off and dies and hides in the wood and dies. And so she kills all 3 of them. And then Henry also dies. Henry and Beverly are this couple, that older couple, that Henry's been cheating on her with some younger person, and Beverly is very upset about that. But Beverly actually killed him by stealing Lauren's sleeping pills, and she did that because she figured she could get away with it if there had been a lot of murders already happening. And so she kills her husband. And so it's really Lauren and Beverly, but Lauren goes down for all of it, and that is how it ends. So as far as And Then There Were None retellings go, I wouldn't say this is very much like that because none of them all knew that they were going to be at that same cabin on that same weekend. It was just very much by chance. So I wouldn't say it's very And Then There Were None at all. They are killing off a person one by one, but it's more to cover up their tracks from the first murder. So I don't know if I would really call that And Then There Were None. So I feel like this is lower on the totem pole. Hello. You're going to get a Shiver update in my car, and it's going to be the quickest update ever. And it's just going to be full premise, spoilers, and all. So, if you have... And it's just going to be a very quick premise. Spoilers and all. So basically, the book centers around Mila, who is invited to a reunion with 5 friends in the French Alps. She was a professional ski-boarder or snowboarder, and that was the last, part of her career was this snowboarding event, and she doesn't want to go back to this reunion, but Curtis, an old love, invites her, and so she feels like she has to go. And then of course it's they haven't seen each other in 10 years since the disappearance of their friend Saskia, who was her arch rival, and the paralyzing injury that happened to their other snowboarder friend Odette. And so of course something goes wrong, someone shows up dead there, and an icebreaker game goes menacing, and they realize they were brought there not necessarily by Curtis. And so that is the premise. And if you've not read this book, you're not going to like this next part. So here's the spoilers. You find out that Odette and Saskia were secretly dating, and that the night before their big event, Mila actually slept with Saskia to throw her off of her game. And Brent, who Mila was dating at the time, finds out the next morning, punches Saskia in the face because he's mad at her. She falls back, hits her head on a rock. And so he thinks that she's dead because she's not breathing. And so he asks his friend Heather to help cover it up by putting her body in her snow bag and bringing it up to the top of the airlift and just chairlift and leaving it up there. He doesn't know what to do with it. But you also find out that Mila had also drugged her drink the night before so that she would wake up groggy and off her game. And so that's why she wasn't breathing, because she had had a lot of sleeping pills. Mila takes that to the grave with her, but they don't know that, so they think she's dead. So then Curtis, her brother, is searching for her, and he's really mad at her for a fight that they got the other day, and he kicks her snow bag off of this crevice, like thousands of feet below, and doesn't realize that her body was in it, and so he accidentally shoved his alive sister off the cliff, and so they all were responsible for it in some way. And then Odette, who was looking for Saskia, couldn't find her. She goes to do her event, is thinking about Saskia, trips, falls, lands on her neck, and is paralyzed, basically quadriplegic, basically paralyzed. And so the twist is that Odette is actually the one that brought them all there, because Odette knows that one of them killed Saskia and wants revenge on it, and she somehow is almost fully recovered from being a paralytic and is a Olympic biathlete and can shoot people while she's skiing and goes on this crazy shooting killer spree. And the only people that make it out alive are Mila and Curtis and Odette. And Odette, I think, goes crazy and they call the cops on her. And Mila and Curtis end up a couple, and Mila never tells him that she drugged his sister. And that was the end. And I'm sorry, but that was too crazy. That would never happen in real life. A fully paralytic person would not be able to do that. And so that was the worst twist of them all, quite honestly, if I'm being realistic. So because of that alone, it got a 2-star because of the ending. But I enjoyed the writing a lot more than I did Ruth Ware's One by One. But I didn't like the ending. The ending really tanked it for me. As far as retellings go, I would say it has all the things that it needs to. An isolated setting, someone brought them all there for one reason, plans on killing them all, getting the answers that they need. It doesn't go exactly how they planned. But this one is pretty, and then there were none retelling. I would put it on the higher side for sure. So that is my update on Shiver, and we're going to go and finish this vlog so that I have enough time. So now we're at the part where we talk about my favorites from favorite to least favorite, and then the actual rankings. And we're going to go through these super quick because you've already heard about all these books. So if we look at this, The Guest List was my favorite. It was a 5-star. It's one of my favorite thrillers. Daisy Darker is close behind. It was also a 5-star. I really, really enjoyed Daisy Darker. An Unwanted Guest is a 4-star. I had a good time with it. Reckless Girls is a 3.5 stars. Honestly, like I said, that book was all vibes. It was not a good book, but it was all vibes. The Hunting Party was a 3-star because I did like it less than Reckless Girls. I did switch Ruth Ware's One by One and Shiver because even though I thought the ending of Shiver brought it down so low, I genuinely enjoyed that book way more than I did One by One. And so hence, I gave Shiver 2.5 stars and Ruth Ware's One by One 2 stars. And then 9 Lives is a 1-star. Honestly, I'd give it a 0 stars if I could. I hated that book. We all know that. And so this is the order. And then There Were None got a 3-star from me, but I'm not going to put that in this because that's the book that all these are based around. Now let's talk about the actual best to worst retelling. I rated them all on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being it is absolutely nothing like it, and 10 being it is 100% like it. Technically, 9 Lives should... we're going to go backwards this time. Technically, 9 Lives should be a 10 because it is an exact copy. But because it is an exact copy, I gave it a 0 because there was nothing original about it whatsoever. Then we get to An Unwanted Guest, and I gave that a 1 simply because the only reason that people ended up dying is because they just so happened to be at that cabin at the same time, and they knew each other from the past, and she knew that she was a murderer, and so it was all very much like if they hadn't been at that cabin at the same time, like this never would have happened. So that's not very, and then There Were None at all, honestly. Then we have The Hunting Party. I gave it a 2 out of 10 because it's the same thing there. They always meet up every year on New Year's for like a reunion. And it just so happens that this time all the secrets are found out and the person has to kill one of them because they don't want that secret to like die, to like be known to everyone else. So it's still very much like by chance secrets were like uncovered. And they've been doing this for 10 years already. Then we have The Guest List. I gave that a 4 out of 10. Pretty much because they all have this wedding, and they're isolated. The only reason that a murder happened is all also by chance. By the chance that the person, one of the people that was helping with the event knew the person, knew that they had done something to them. And hence, they're all brought to chance. But I thought that one was a little bit better done than The Hunting Party. Then we get to Ruth Ware's One by One. I gave it a 5 out of 10. A reason it got a 5 out of 10 is because one of the people that was on the trip, was being blackmailed and it was the whole thing. And they made sure to get themselves invited on the trip so that they could take care of this business, because they wouldn't have been invited on the trip otherwise. And so that was very much like preemptive, like they knew what they were getting themselves into. Reckless Girls, I gave a 6 out of 10 because, like I said in the spoilers, 2 of them had planned for them to all meet on the island so that they could kill specific people that had wronged them. And it was very much preemptive. It was very much not well done, but it was still very much like they brought them there for a reason. And then we have Shiver, which is an 8 out of 10 because the person literally planned it all. I just thought it was not nearly as great of execution as Daisy Darker. It was an 8 out of 10. Honestly, it's probably a 9 out of 10 now that I think about it. It was very much an and then there were done retelling. I thought it was interesting. And then Daisy Darker pulls it all at a 10 out of 10. I think it is a great retelling. I think it is very unique. I think it is very different. I know there are people that are not going to agree with me on where I ranked all of these, but this is my vlog, so this is how I ranked them. And if I was to read these all again, I probably wouldn't read some of these, but I did have a genuinely good time reading most of these. And so these are the final rankings. And that is the vlog. I hope you loved it. Let me know what books you've read and what you haven't. And we're going to move on because I have no more time in this vlog. Bye.